Good afternoon, this is Good Medicine, and today the good medicine I'm going to give you comes from the ancient Greeks. Now, I'm going to start off with the movie called Troy. In the movie called Troy, in one of the opening scenes, you have this kind of no-name Greek city-state, and, this gentleman, whoever the head of this Greek city-state is, marches his army out to meet this gentleman named Agamemnon, and Agamemnon was the leader of the Mycenaean Empire. And the Mycenaean Empire was the first big Greek empire that we saw in the classics. Some would argue that the Minoans and Crete could kind of take up that mantle as well, but I would say the Mycenaeans were like the first. And Agamemnon was a very controversial figure, and he had all sorts of Greek city-states incorporated into his empire that didn't really want to be there. And actually one of them was Achilles, from what I can tell. I believe Achilles was Akkadian or something like that. So these two guys are talking, these leaders of men, and they're saying, hey, how about this? Instead of us fighting this battle and all these guys die or whatever, and one of us wins, how about we just have our heroes fight? Because that's something that people did, like the story of David and Goliath, for example. That's like one of our oldest tales of heroes of city-states fighting. Like, it's very likely that Goliath and David were both real people, right? David almost surely, but even Goliath, it's not just a myth. We thought this with the Iliad and the Odyssey for the longest time too. We thought it was fake until, people start putting things together and do an archaeological dig in modern day Turkey, and they find the walls of Troy. So, they kind of did the same thing with David and Goliath. Goliath was a Philistine, and during archaeological digs at various sites throughout the Middle East, they started to find pottery that had Goliath written on it. Like, Goliath was a hero to the Philistines, most likely, and he was revered as he was an actual blood and flesh individual that, he's like a sports figure, because war is one of our oldest sports. It's one of our oldest forms of competition with the ultimate consequence. And it wasn't until after, at least in our modern age, World War I, until it stopped being that way, right? Because after World War I, it's like, dude, how do I even put a face to this? Like, I just lost more people in one battle than I've lost in one war in the last 200 years. So, that's a little bit of a side note, but these two leaders say, hey, let's have our heroes battle this out. And whoever wins. And, they come up with their terms. So the gentleman from the Greek city-state that Agamemnon is trying to conquer, he agrees, and he goes, Boagrius! And, this mountain of a man comes running out of the ranks. This dude's got a collar on, they had him chained up before they let him go to go fight somebody, and he's like a foot taller than everybody else, and he's got scars all over his body, and he's been in a lot of fights, and he is what every man that has to get into a fist fight fears. He's really scary and intimidating and big and strong and everything you don't want to fight. So Agamemnon kind of smirks and, oh yeah, okay, he's big and scary. Achilles! And Achilles is nowhere to be found. So kind of snicker and laugh and go, oh yeah, Boagrius tends to have this effect on many Greek heroes, he says. But Agamemnon knows that Achilles isn't scared. Achilles just doesn't like Agamemnon, because Agamemnon is a bit of a tyrant and conquered his city-state, his home, we can assume. So Agamemnon says to a boy, says to one of his guys, go get me Achilles. And his guy finds this little boy and sends this little boy off to find Achilles. And he finds Achilles wrapped up with a couple of girls, and Achilles just had a wild night. He was obviously hungover, and the girls are naked, so they were up getting drunk, having sex, whatever, cool. So little boy wakes him up and almost gets killed by Achilles because he's probably got a crap ton of PTSD. He says, hey, you're requested on the battlefield. And, there's this Greek hero from another city-state that's challenging you to a fight. And Achilles doesn't stay in bed. Good, that's the easy thing to do. That's the easy choice. Achilles gets out of bed. And he puts on his armor. He gets on his horse. And the little boy says, Achilles, the man you're about to fight is the largest man I've ever seen. He's terrifying. I would never fight him. And Achilles says, that's why no one will remember your name. It's a profound statement. And it goes into two Greek words that I want to discuss today. Aristea and arate. Aristea is essentially committing yourself to a set of heroic actions in order to potentially achieve arate. And arate is, as Achilles would put it, your name echoing in eternity. Your name surviving the test of time. That is your afterlife. So Achilles rides his horse to the battlefield and he sees Boagrius, and he could have turned away and ran because, I don't know that anybody would really necessarily blame him, but he didn't. He put everything on the line. He risked it all, and it wasn't for Agamemnon. In the movie, they try to set the stage that it's, Achilles is concerned with the lives of the men, and maybe that was true, I don't know, but most of all, Achilles was concerned with his arate. He was concerned with his name. He wanted to survive because he wanted to achieve an afterlife. And that was the nearest afterlife that he could sense and see. So he goes and he fights Boagrius, and he jumps up and stabs him in the neck, and he dies. And then he says something like, is there no one else? Is there no one else? Does anybody else want to fight me? That's his aristea. All the eyes were on him, right? He's flexing. He can't, post his fight video to his Facebook page. He needs eyes on him. That's his opportunity, right? It's his one shot. I'm trying to sound like Eminem, right? He got, he vomited on his freaking body armor, and it was his mom's spaghetti, too. Opportunities like that don't come every day, and he knows that. He had the opportunity to stand in the face of what was terrifying and scary and show everybody that was there and watching that he was the best, the greatest, the best warrior, the hero of Greece. So, maybe there's a guy there watching and he's a poet, and he writes a poem about the bravery of Achilles. Maybe there's a songwriter there and he sings a song and it catches on in the barracks, right? Maybe they sing that song for the next 300 years. So 300, maybe it's 250 years after you die, somebody's singing a song about you and how brave and great you are. Maybe, just maybe, the greatest author of Greek antiquity writes the most famous Greek epic about you, because you are the bravest and you are the best and you committed to the most aristea, and therefore you have achieved arate. Because the Iliad and the Odyssey is reading 101 to Western civilization, right? Any Greek classic worth its salt is going to have you read the Iliad and the Odyssey, and most people think it's the entire story of Achilles. It's not. The Iliad and the Odyssey ends after Achilles' second battle, which is his destiny. His destiny is to go fight this man named Hector, because he has defeated the greatest heroes in Greece, but it's not enough. Because to get the level of arate that Achilles desires, to the immortal status, he needs to beat every hero that exists in the known world. Just beating, Boagrius isn't enough. Nobody cares about Boagrius. He's the local tough guy. I have to go face off against this guy named Hector, the son of the great Priam. He's supposedly the best warrior in all of Troy. So that's what Achilles does. And the movie and the book make it seem as though his mother is somewhat of a mystic. And she tells him he's not coming back. He's going to die, but his name will echo through eternity, and that is worth it for Achilles. That is his afterlife. And he goes and he fights this foreign war, and there's all sorts of amazing acts of aristea, and he commits to the aristea, and it's all culminating and building up to this point where he fights Hector after Hector accidentally kills Patroclus, who is, in the movie they say it's Achilles' cousin. I'm not sure if that's what they say in the book, because a lot of people think that Patroclus was actually maybe Achilles' lover. But the Greeks, again, didn't really have a word for homosexuality, so it's hard to know for sure. The closest word they would have had to describe that type of relationship would have been a pederasty, which is where we get our term pedophile from. Because in antiquity, and it was not uncommon for an older male to have some type of relationship with a younger male. And, it was kind of like a molding relationship, and I don't know, like zeitgeist. I'm here to deliver the message, not to pass judgment. So, it's not clear what Patroclus was to Achilles, but whether Patroclus was his family, right, his beloved cousin, or his lover, right, Achilles was really pissed after Hector killed him. And he was already there to essentially fight Hector, so he challenges Hector to a fight. And Hector is a hero, and he has to respond. And Hector essentially knows he's going to die, but it's the game he's playing. That is the game he signed up for. And to refuse Achilles' invitation to battle would have been akin to death. So, why not at least fight and maybe try to win, right? In a sense, just the act of bravery that Hector showed in fighting Achilles was an aristea, definitely an aristea and arate, because he worked himself into the story of Achilles. So, Achilles fights and he wins. And the book, The Iliad and the Odyssey, I think ends with Achilles putting Hector's body, tying it up to his chariot, and dragging it in front of the walls of Troy back and forth. Like screaming something like a madman. So, I thought that was an interesting lesson, and it's like you hear stuff like this often, and you go, "Oh, cool! Like that's cool. What a fun fact!" Like, no, not a fun fact. This is everything. This is the greatest knowledge that the Greeks had to pass on to us. What is it saying? Right? This is their Bible. This is their religion in a sense. The Iliad and the Odyssey and the Homer epics. So, no, we don't, it's not a Snapple fact. This is a story that explains how they viewed life and how to live a life of meaning in ancient Greece. And it explained as much as they could about themselves through those stories, those myths. So, consider that. And when you look at it, for one, you have to try not to judge the zeitgeist too much, because if you just sit there and judge everybody through the lens of your time, you're not going to get anywhere. You're going to be too busy just going, that was gay, or that was pedophilia, or that was racist or xenophobic or whatever. Try to learn as though you are Achilles. Try to learn as though you are an ancient Greek, right? Don't read the story as them. Read it as you. And maybe you will get to the truth of the matter and the truth of the story. And maybe, just maybe, you will learn something that will change your life and will be fundamental to shaping who you are moving forward in the future. So, arate, aristea, that's what I have for you today. It's good medicine.